What's good, my friends? Welcome back to the channel, and on today's video we have a shootout. We have a shootout between Saucony's Endorphin Speed 4 and TYR's Valkyrie Speedworks. Let's get into it. Of course, we're going to get started off with those disclosures. Both the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4 and the TYR Valkyrie Speedworks were sent to me for the purpose of review. However, no one has told me what to say, no one has any editorial privileges, and all the thoughts and opinions are my own. First of all, let's get started off with price, and this is an easy one. The Endo Speed 4 and the Valkyrie Speedworks are both $170. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a spoiler in that these shoes are more comparable than just their price. But let's dig into a few specs so we can compare them a little more closely. The Endorphin Speed 4 has 36 in the heel, 28 in the forefoot for an 8mm drop. The Valkyrie Speedworks has 39.5 in the heel, 33.5 in the forefoot for a 6mm drop. So 8mm drop, 6mm drop. First question, which drop do you prefer? Saucony claims that in a US men's size 9, the Endo Speed 4 would tip the scale at 8.2 ounces or 233 grams. However, in my size of US men's size 13, it tips the scale at 10.4 ounces or 294 grams. The TYR Valkyrie Speedworks in a US men's size 9 tips the scale at 8.1 ounces or 230 grams. That's 3 grams less than the same size in the Endo Speed 4. And in my size, a US men's size 13, the Valkyrie Speedworks tips the scale at 10.1 ounces or 286 grams. So in my size, the Valkyrie Speedworks is 8 grams lighter than the Endo Speed 4. Okay, why don't we start at the top of both shoes and work our way down? Let's start with the Endo Speed 4. I'm gonna hold this up. Now, to me, this is just typical Saucony, and I mean that is in the padding of the thickness of the heel collar. It's just very similar to a lot of Saucony shoes. And of course, it's more than enough padding to get the job done, and it's very comfortable. The heel counter is very rigid in the Speed 4, which, you know, is what we'd expect for a training shoe and possible race day shoe. And the same goes for the Valkyrie Speedworks, except we have just a tad more padding around the heel collar, and it's not overdone. This isn't like a traditional daily trainer. It's definitely minimized to save weight, and the heel counter is pretty much the same as the Endo Speed 4. It's very rigid, and I had no heel slip in both the Endo Speed 4 and the Valkyrie Speedworks. The upper on the Endorphin Speed 4 is an engineered mesh, and you know, it's pretty traditional for this type of trainer. It's light, it's fairly breathable. We've got these laser cut holes here in the toe box, and as I think is pretty obvious just by looking at both these shoes, I've had the Endorphin Speed 4 a little longer than Valkyrie Speedworks, and my Endo Speed 4 is looking pretty dirty. The upper on the Valkyrie Speedworks, in comparison, is much lighter and much more breathable. Let me hold this up. In fact, let me see if I can put my hand in, see my fingers moving around in that toe box. Guys, it's super light. This is TYR's Alpha Weave upper, and for a training shoe, it is extremely light. This is certainly a more race day inspired upper than the engineered mesh on the Endo Speed 4. And I'd say that's a lot of where the weight savings is coming from in the Speedworks as opposed to the Endo Speed 4. Overlays on both shoes are fairly similar. Obviously, we've got the Saucony logo coming around the side. That's giving a little extra support. No such logos in the same place on the Speedworks. Now, around the back, around the heel counter, we've got just some small overlays, just some branding. We have an underlay coming around the toe box, and then, of course, along the eyelet chain, just to strengthen that bit that takes a lot of punishment when we cinch down the laces. On the Valkyrie Speedworks, okay, we've got a little more overlays on the Speedworks coming around the heel, and instead of an underlay, we have an overlay coming around the toe box. And then again, as to be expected, on both sides of the eyelet chain, we've got a little bit of reinforcement. Both the Speedworks and the Speed 4 have that extra hold in case you need to do the runner's knot. Now, the tongues on both these shoes are also fairly similar. I would say that the Valkyrie Speedworks has a little more padding in the tongue up top, or at least, let me just feel that, you know, it's very similar. I still stand by that. The TYR has a little bit more padding, and that padding comes down a little bit more. If I hold it up, you can see the padding comes down to this lace loop right here. Now, on the Endo Speed 4, you can see this tongue has that padding just where we'd expect, right at the top, because that's where we tie the laces across the top of our foot, and then it transitions into a very aerated mesh from about here. So all of this is aerated mesh. On the Speedworks, that aerated mesh starts a little bit further down, looks like about 2/3 of the way down, then we've got aerated mesh. Both the tongues on the Speedworks and the Endo Speed 4 are gusseted, so you're not going to have any problems with tongue migration in either of these shoes. Both shoes do fit true to size. However, TYR advertises a more anatomical shaped toe box in the Speedworks. Well, not more anatomical shape, they just advertise an anatomical shaped toe box. And when I hold that up, can you see a difference? Now, I tell you, I can certainly feel a difference. I feel like my toes have a little bit more room in the Speedworks than in the Speed 4. However, when I am looking it up and I'm holding it up, I guess I can see a difference. It's quite slight. Now, I should say that even though this does have an anatomical shaped toe box, it isn't the same kind of toe box as you'd find in an Ultra or a Topo shoe. But anytime we can get a little more room in a toe box, I'm definitely here for that. Oh, I don't know if you noticed, but I already mentioned the lace loop on the Speedworks. The Endo Speed 4 does not have a lace loop. I don't know if that would actually matter to anyone because both tongues are gusseted, and I didn't notice it lacking when I was wearing the Speed 4. Let's come down to the midsole, and we know that that is where the magic happens in most running shoes. However, in this segment of running shoes, the up-tempo trainer, the possible inexpensive race day shoe, it really matters. Now, both the Speed 4 and the Speedworks are using a beaded PEBA foam. Both are using 2 layers of that beaded PEBA foam, and sandwiched in between those PEBA levels is a nylon plate. Now, Saucony's PEBA foam is Power Run PB, and TYR's PEBA foam is Launch PX. The Endorphin Speed 4 is the training partner to Saucony's race day shoe, the Endorphin Pro 4, which has the same Power Run PB, and this year on the Pro 4 has a little bit of Power Run HG. And the Valkyrie Speedworks is the training partner to the Valkyrie Elite Carbon, which also uses Launch PX and has a carbon fiber plate. And the Endorphin Pro 4 also has a carbon fiber plate. I think I forgot to mention that. Anyway, both are beaded PEBA foams and both perform quite similar. And by that, I mean they are both a real treat to run in. Now, we'll talk about the ride in just a second, but let's go back to nylon plates. In the Speed 4, we do have a winged nylon plate in this version. And the winged part of the nylon plate is just to give it a little more structure, make it a little more flexible. And when I bend it up, yeah, I got a good amount of flex in that shoe. It's still quite stiff. And the Valkyrie Speedworks has just a flat nylon plate. There's no wings in it. And if I bend it up like this, you know what? I am actually going to say, and on video that I'm doing this right now, this is the first time I've actually done it, I can tell you that the nylon plate in the Speedworks is just a little bit more firm than the Endorphin Speed 4. The Speed 4 is just a little bit more flex in it, even though it is a winged nylon plate. Take that for what it's worth. Coming down to the outsole, the Endorphin Speed 4 has a lattice patterned outsole rubber, a lot of coverage up here on the forefoot, strategically placed rubber here on the back. You know what? This is a good amount of rubber. We've got a little cutout here where we can see that nylon plate. It's actually a very similar story on the Valkyrie Speedworks. Got a lot of outsole rubber up here on the forefoot, same little strategic strips on the back with a window in the middle showing off that nylon plate. And when I hold both up like that, we can see it looks like the Valkyrie Speedworks has just perhaps a little more rubber, and that's only because on the heel of the Endorphin Speed 4 we have like little rings, and here kind of fills out that rubber on the heels. Anyway, as far as grip goes, I really didn't notice a difference. I did run in both of these shoes at the same time, so one on each foot, and I was trying to scuff my feet and trying to find something different, and I really couldn't. Okay, so let's talk about ride, because ride is why you're going to be buying these shoes. Well, maybe not the ride, but you want the ride to be good if you're spending $170 on shoes. And look, both of these shoes are made to go fast. They have PEBA foam, they have a nylon plate to give it a little extra support, but they're made for speed. However, I found that both of these shoes work incredibly well at slower paces. You know how some of these race day options, at least for me, I found that some race day shoes just don't work well at slower paces. You really have to get up on your forefoot in order to make that geometry come alive, to really take advantage of everything the shoe has going for it. I didn't find that to be the case in the Endorphin Speed 4 or the Valkyrie Speedworks. Both of these shoes work well at all paces. So I'd go so far as to say that if you wanted just one pair of shoes, that you wanted to do everything, and by everything, I mean going out for easy runs some days, faster runs other days, and racing, I think you would do well with either the Endorphin Speed 4 or the Valkyrie Speedworks. Both shoes ride extremely similar, and that's a product of them using the same type of foam. It seems to be the same density. There isn't a big difference between these shoes when they're on your foot. However, when I started to really think about what I was feeling while I was running, I did notice a couple of things. The first thing I noticed was the midfoot lockdown, and I definitely prefer the midfoot lockdown of the Valkyrie Speedworks over the Endorphin Speed 4. Now, if you did see my full review of the Endorphin Speed 4, you know that I was complaining about there being a lot of volume in this shoe, and I had to cinch the laces really tight together in order to get a good lockdown. So that hasn't changed. But when I did put both shoes on at the same time, and I looked at how tightly I was tying the laces, it didn't appear to be that different. You know what I'm saying? It just feels like there's a little more volume in the Endorphin Speed 4 than there is in the Valkyrie Speedworks. But as far as that midfoot lockdown go, I definitely put it down to just the gusset on the tongue. I'm assuming that the gusseted tongue on the Speedworks is just a little tighter, and it gave me a little more feeling of security. I feel very nitpicky to kind of tear apart how each shoe rode, just because when I say they were similar, I mean they are very similar. However, if I had to give each one a score, and remember this is just my opinion, I found the Speedworks to feel just a little bit more snappy when I was towing off, when I was picking up the pace and towing off, than the Endorphin Speed 4. Now, the Endorphin Speed 4 is definitely more snappy than the Endorphin Speed 3 before it. It's just a little bit more aggressive. But when it came down to it, I think the Valkyrie Speedworks is actually slightly faster feeling than the Speed 4 and feels slightly better at slower paces than the Speed 4. So I feel kind of bad saying it, but these shoes are clearly, very clearly designed to go head to head. And because they're made by different brands, they are not going to be identical. So we are going to have favorites. And in this case, between the TYR Valkyrie Speedworks and the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4. For my running at least, I think the Valkyrie Speedworks is a better shoe, and I would love to hear your thoughts. So now it's your turn. I did ask a couple of questions in this video. I asked which drop you prefer. Remember, we've got 8, we've got 6. And because TYR is a very new company and this is the first year of the Valkyrie Speedworks, I think they've done phenomenally well. And it feels kind of weird for me to say that I like the Valkyrie Speedworks better than the Endorphin Speed 4, because the Endorphin Speed holds such a prominent place in running lore. But that's my 2 cents. And for now, it's Matt B. This has been a shootout between the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4 and the TYR Valkyrie Speedworks. Be kind, be happy, run well. I'll see you in a couple of days.